my paranormal people. This week I'm taking on a legend that's very close to my heart. Close in a lot more ways than that actually, as it takes place in my hometown. It's a tragic story, a very sad tale, but an absolutely fantastic legend. Sit back and enjoy the Banister Doll. In the early 19th century, on this very road, an awful tragic event took place. May Banister lived with his daughter, Dorothy. Now, Dorothy was still a teenager, but she was very beautiful and she had lots of male suitors. One day, she came home to tell her daddy that she was in the family way. May Banister didn't take it at all well. The events that happened after that lead to a most chilling ghost story and legend that Prestonians still very rarely talk about. It's one of those that we talk at night under the covers, but we don't let anybody know. You wouldn't recognise that old street now if you drove down it. No tenement buildings, no cobblestones, nothing eerie at all about it. But back when poor Dorothy lost her life, the streets looked an awful lot dimmer, more dismal, more spooky. Yes, Dorothy lost her life. It is a ghost story after all. Poor Dorothy, she was only small, a very petite girl. That's why people around her gave her the name of Banister Doll, because she was tiny and looked like a porcelain doll. Her father must have forgot how strong he was in comparison to poor Dorothy, because he dragged her outside by the hair, tied her to a post, and he whipped her. And he whipped her, and he whipped her, till Dorothy collapsed on the floor. He untied her, but poor Dorothy was too far gone by then. She eventually died of her wounds that he'd inflicted upon her. Now this next part of the legend, Prestonians differ on. I'll tell you the tale that's most commonly told. After poor Dorothy died, her body was laid to rest at Trinity Church. Trinity Church just so happened to be right next door to Snow Hill, which is where May Banister and Dorothy lived. But with all things, progress happened. The church no longer stands, it's now a car park. But as you've seen from the earlier video, Snow Hill has changed drastically too. No tenement buildings or cobblestones anymore. Now, if you're waiting to hear the ghost story, I promise I'm nearly there. Just this little last bit of the legend to go. Apparently, after poor Dorothy had been laid to rest, a boulder was placed in the area where her life was taken, and mothers and fathers from around the area would bring their young daughters and warn them of the dangers of promiscuity. And while they were warning them, they all got told the tragic tale of poor Banister Doll. So now, let's get to the ghost story. Not long after Banister Doll died, the corpse of a young man was found in the city centre of Preston. Both his rib cage and his skull had been crushed to a pulp, and the authorities were mystified as to how he met his end. 2 weeks later, a corpse of a second young man was discovered in similar circumstances, and then a third. Word started to spread like wildfire that Banister Doll had returned from the grave with a mission to seek vengeance upon all men because of what her father had done so cruelly to her. The mysterious deaths eventually tailed off, but sightings of the dreaded Banister Doll didn't. Locals then started to claim that at dusk they could see the phantasm of the young girl floating up Snow Hill. There was something about the appearance of the girl that literally terrified those who got a glimpse of her. Eventually, May Banister died, and a new family moved into his house. They were immediately accosted by the menacing Banister Doll, and after 2 nights vacated the dwelling, swearing never to return. Another family moved in, and they stuck it out for 3 nights before fleeing in terror. Banister Doll is still occasionally seen in Preston. In the 1960s, a milkman claimed to have spied the ghost near Ladywell Street early one morning and was seemingly unnerved by the experience. The overwhelming common denominator with all the Banister Doll sightings is the burgeoning sense of menace that accompanies them. Now, it's supposedly said that witnesses who have experienced a sighting of the Banister Doll have seemed to be more frightened than you would expect. Maybe more frightened than they would be if they'd seen any other ghost. Now, is this because she exudes a malevolent aura? I don't know, but she is supposedly one of the scariest ghosts that people have witnessed. It's been said that in life, Dorothy was a pleasant child, well-mannered and always had a smile on her face. But maybe the way she was murdered by her own father twisted her spirit somehow, so when the ghost appears, she's full of vengeance. I don't know, I suppose that's something we'd all have to make our own mind up about. But I could understand if it was that. Could you imagine being whipped to death by your own father? I guess we're never going to know if the ghost of Banister Doll was responsible for the deaths of those young men. You know, maybe it's just a legend. But would you want to take the chance of walking round Snow Hill in Ladywell at night all alone? I don't think I would.